right, so welcome to our domestic violence prevention, intervention, and postvention, or as we've so lovingly called it, healthy connections. Because really, at the end of the day, that is our main focus: is healthy connections between friends, between families, between intimate partners, between relationships, and even on the bigger picture too, between our communities. So starting off pretty simple, really what is domestic violence? It is a term that we hear kind of thrown around often, and many folks tend to immediately think intimate partner violence or IPV, but domestic violence can really come in a few different forms, and we're going to break those all down. So, as a whole, domestic violence really is a pattern and the pattern of abusive behaviors in any relationship that's used by one person to gain or maintain power and control over the other person. So, again, when you hear domestic violence, you tend to think interpartner, interpersonal, or as well as just physical abuse, but abuse can manifest in many different forms. There could be emotional abuse, psychological abuse, and even financial abuse. And unfortunately, violence is more common than a lot of folks think, especially being here in Putnam County. Some folks may like to believe that it's not an issue that we deal with, but unfortunately it is, and it tends to be very underreported. So, according to the hotline.org, nearly 3 in 10 women and 1 in 10 men in the US have experienced sexual assault, physical abuse, and/or stalking by a partner. In addition, most intimate partner violence, IPV incidents, are not reported to the police. So these numbers are expected to be higher. So again, domestic violence can look like intimate partner violence between a wife and a husband, a wife and a wife, between two spouses. It can look like dating violence between a boyfriend, girlfriend, or partners. It could be domestic violence, meaning within the residence. This could again still be with partners, but it can also occur within family members. Again, dating violence, as well as gender-based violence. And at the end of the day, all forms of abuse really are just meant to allow the abuser to maintain power and control over an individual. So this is our wonderful power and control wheel. This really is a great tool to kind of show the different ways that power and control can be used by an abuser. Again, we do tend to think of physical abuse or even sometimes emotional, verbal abuse, but things like using their children, for example, making their partner feel guilty about their children or using the children as messengers, using visitation opportunities to harass, threatening to take their children away. Another big form that we see is economic abuse. This could be keeping a partner from getting a job, limiting their transportation to and from said job, limiting their income or giving them an allowance, not allowing them to have their own bank account, their own savings account, their own credit cards, not allowing them to have access to like the family's total income or the joint accounts. So there's many, many different ways that economic abuse can kind of play out. Another thing as well is using their privilege. So an abuser can treat their partner like a servant, making all the big decisions, leaving them with all the chores, having to be an unfair share, kind of being, that abuser is that one person in the main role and really just putting that survivor out to dry. So when we think about coercions and threats, making and or carrying out threats to do something to hurt their partner, a lot of folks can threaten to leave, they can threaten to harm themselves or commit suicide. Really, they can use all different ways to manipulate somebody to either get them to stay or get them just to continue giving into their desires. Of course, intimidation occurs as well, making their partner be afraid. It could be as simple as a look. Looks can speak 1,000 words. Actions, gestures, all the way up to getting physical, smashing their property, smashing their belongings. It could be abusing pets, displaying weapons. Unfortunately, there's many different ways. And another big one when it comes to abuse as well is isolation. So a lot of times in these scenarios, the abuser will isolate the survivor, controlling what they do, who they see, who they talk to, basically just isolating them further and further from their supports. And a lot of times they use jealousy to justify this. So again, these are just a handful of ways. Unfortunately, in this line of work, we tend to learn that no two situations are the same and many different scenarios can play. So we always want to make sure that we're keeping these things in mind, looking at certain cases and finding similarities just to ensure that all the angles are being covered and we're doing a full assessment for safety. So again, when I talk about violence as a whole and domestic violence, I always go back to this idea of it being a pattern because it truly is. So this chart really just kind of shows a great example of how these things can flow in these relationships. So it could be starting off, of course, starting off in the honeymoon phase, in the puppy dog phase. Small arguments may start to happen, but you guys talk about it. There's apologies. You promise to not allow it to happen again. You can promise that I will go see a counselor. I will go get help. You can declare your love for this person. And in the victim's shoes, you're just getting to know this person, or, you're empathetic and you want to give them chances. So you agree to stay. You want them to, maybe seek out the help that they need. As time goes on, we enter this kind of tension building stage. And again, these can flip flop. It can be one day honeymoon phase, one day tension building phase. Um, but little arguments here and there. There can be isolation, they can nitpick, they can withdraw affection, yelling. Sometimes there's substances, drinking and drugs involved. And really, the survivor here is just trying to maintain. They're walking on eggshells. So, attempting to calm them down, maybe kind of isolating their children from the situation, really just trying to be agreeable and get through this. And then, of course, we have the explosion phase, which tends to be the incident. This again can become a range of things. It could be extreme verbal abuse, it could be physical abuse. Some examples here: hitting, choking, humiliation, imprisonment, use of weapons. And the victim's response really is just protection and trying to survive. They go into survival mode, right? They protect themselves, they protect their children. Some folks contact the police. However, some folks don't feel safe contacting the police for a number of reasons. Really, the survivor just does everything they can to survive during this time. So it's times like these where vital resources come in, whether it be contacting law enforcement, whether it be trying to find shelter and flee, contacting an organization like ours. These are really the scary moments. And again, from there, it can cycle back to the honeymoon phase by the next morning. So this cycle comes and goes. It can alternate between honeymoon and tension for a while until that explosion comes, but abuse tends to be the systemic pattern and this cycle of kind of filtering through the motions. So, when I say all this, unfortunately, there is a common notion in the public and I guess in society of, well, if it was so bad, why didn't they just leave? Unfortunately, it's something that I hear often. And the simple fact of the matter is, it's not nearly as simple. So, there's obviously a huge risk of physical violence and or psychological harm. A very unfortunate statistic is that women are 70 times more likely to be killed in the weeks after leaving their abusive partner than any other time during the relationship. So if someone's actively in a relationship where they're receiving threats, where their children are involved, where they have limited financial resources, leaving is a very hard mountain to climb. So that brings us to the next point of risk to finances. According to the National Network to End Domestic Violence, DV is the leading cause of homelessness for women and children. Again, this financial abuse, not allowing them to have a job, not allowing them access to transportation. If someone really doesn't have a savings account or really even a checking account, how do they begin to leave? How do they begin to get on their feet and really start to move forward? Another thing in leaving is it's a risk to the relationship with their partner, as well as with their family and friends and community. Most people don't get into a relationship because they don't like that person. Most people fall in love. Most people will date this person and get to know this person. And it usually doesn't start off chaotic and turbulent. And at the end of the day, a lot of the folks that we interact with still have love for their partner and still love their partner or their family members or whoever they may be suffering from. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. We can still have love for somebody and not their actions. And then in addition to that, when it comes to, it could be you're friends with the abuser's family or the abuser's friends, or you're within the abuser's community. And leaving them means the loss of those friendships, the loss of those connections, on top of already the isolating actions of that partner. So you could just be down to having your abuser's family as your contacts. So leaving your abuser really means leaving all your contacts, period. So all of these different things really do factor in as to why folks stay. So, all of this feels big and heavy, and I promise it doesn't have to, because coming together like this in an educational manner, in a community manner, just really speaking out against this and letting folks know that we have resources, that's the place to start. So, again, like I mentioned a bit earlier, really we can break it down into three sections of prevention, intervention, and postvention. So, prevention, of course, raising awareness. We're going to kind of break all these down more. Intervention is really providing those resources and the support, and postvention really is reviewing cases to learn and continued support for the client. So, our whole mission really is to end violence, period. But of course, while doing that, we strive to learn more about it, more about how to prevent it, and really how to keep folks safe in relationships. And it really does take a united front to ensure that our friends, our loved ones, and our community is safe from violence. So, how do you specifically help? Educate yourselves. And hey, congrats, you're here and you're off to a great start. Getting involved in things like this and being involved in your community is the best place to start. Be vocal and share the knowledge. Take what you learned today and go further. Educate yourself further. Educate the folks around you, your friends, your family, your children. Talk about consent, talk about boundaries and healthy relationships and violence and anti violence, just to really make sure that folks know that it's something that we won't put up with anymore and we're going to give resources. And of course, get involved. Support your local domestic violence organization and support other organizations that support survivors via fundraising events. You can share the word on social media, or you can even volunteer with us in your free time. So, if someone you specifically know is in an unhealthy relationship, it can kind of feel like a big task to conquer to say, how do I help? I don't want to overstep. So, the very first step to know is that there's help out there for you and for that loved one. So some ways to go about this could be connecting with the friend privately. We don't want it to be a whole thing in front of all their friends and family. We kind of want this to be a one-on-one thing that happens in like a safe, private space. Just let them know straight up that help exists. If you don't feel comfortable going the resource route, let them know that you are the resource. Connect with that friend, see what resources they need at this time, see if you can provide housing for them or help them navigate the resources. If they're open to hearing resources, have those in your back pocket too. Learn about local resources, learn about national resources. Of course, that you're support for them and offer assistance in developing a safety plan, which sounds big and scary. I promise it's not. So, a safety plan is in the name. It's simply a plan for safety. It's a tool that folks can have to prepare for potentially dangerous situations. So, folks can safety plan about how to live safely with their abuser, how to keep your children, your pets, or yourself safe from an abuser, or even emotional safety planning for arguments, how to isolate yourself from those harmful situations, how to get yourself help during those times. So here at the Women's Center, the WRC, Women's Resource Center, has a 24/7 hotline that can assist folks with safety planning, in addition to, of course, our regular office staff. Our case management and our advocacy team are professionals when it comes to safety planning, so we are always available as a resource as well. But say your friend may not be ready to reach out for help, say you might not be ready to reach for help, we still want to give you guys some tools for your pockets. So here's some common safety planning tactics that may help. So, kind of to have a plan for if there is ever an explosive incident, whether that be a verbal argument or a physical argument. These are just some kind of tips for folks to keep in mind. Try to stay in a room that has more than one exit or be aware of the exits within the room. Always try to keep a phone within that room or a phone on your person. Have them learn the escape route. Make sure that they understand different ways that they can go. How are they going? Are they going to walk? Are they going to take public transportation? Do they have their own transportation? They need to know basically where they're going and how to get there. Having a go bag really is vital for folks. And again, these are going to look different for everybody. It could be clothing, essentials, hygiene products, important paperwork like marriage licenses, driver licenses, birth certificates, socials, orders of protection, any spare cash, credit cards, any car titles, insurance forms, anything important that you may think of that you might need access to. In addition, that you may not want the abuser having access to, try to have that ready to go. Another great tip is developing a safe word with a support. So, say, for example, if I'm in a dangerous situation, but I know my Aunt Jane is my safe person. And Aunt Jane told me, if you ever need a place to go, you can come here. So I talk to Aunt Jane and I say, Aunt Jane, if I ever text you the word banana, please drive and come pick me up at my house. And Aunt Jane knows if I ever text her the word banana, Aunt Jane knows to come and pick me up. Certain things like these. Again, it doesn't need to be for a shelter situation. If you're unable to contact the police, one, the police does have a text forward now, which is amazing. But if it still is not a safe option for you, you can tell a friend to safe word and that friend can contact the police. And then, of course, find a place to stay safely, even if it is temporary, whether it be crashing on a friend's couch for one night, contacting your local resources, or contacting your local DV shelter as us. Really finding somewhere safe and warm is very important. So, even when folks do get out, safety is still going to be vital and resources are still needed. So, basically, after someone flees, we still want to make sure that they are safe and secure. So, some suggestions that we often make, and again, you can share these with folks in your lives as well. Upgrading security systems, even something as simple as a Ring camera, so folks can have access on their phone to who is passing by their door throughout the day. We always recommend folks change their phone numbers as well as create a new email address. Change any and all passwords that the person you do not want contacting you, that they may have had access to. You want to change all your passwords. In addition, you want to make sure that your location services are off, both in your cell phone settings and in different social media settings. You also want to change your daily routines and routes. I mean, if you truly think about it, if you live with someone for a long time, they know the route you take to work. They know around what time you leave. They know around what time you take lunch. They know around what time you go home. You usually go to the grocery market on Tuesdays. You know, a lot of this stuff that we do in our lives is routine. So thinking about changing your routines, changing your routes. If you're employed, maybe notifying your employer that this situation's going on. See if you can maybe change locations of the store branch or possibly do some remote work, again, to the comfort of that person. And most importantly, get connected to supports, whether it be therapeutic supports, whether it be case management supports to help with things like housing and finances, whether it be our advocacy supports to help with legal stuff, with working for orders of protection, working on custody agreements, making sure that folks are connected. So again, what happens after a person flees? Help is still needed, of course. And we really do take great pride in supporting survivors, regardless of their current situation. Again, we help folks who are living with their abuser at the time of the incident. We help folks who have been living with their abuser for 10, 20, 30 years. We assist folks who leave after one incident. We assist folks who leave after 20. It's an average of 7 times for someone to leave and officially leave, meaning someone leaves 6 to 7 times before finally leaving for good, and that's just the average. So again, regardless of where someone is in their journey, our main priority is safety. And a lot of the times, our clients know what their safety looks like better than we do. So again, sometimes it is safer for the folks to stay in their situation. Sometimes it is safer to stay put in a safety plan and put these plans in place. So every situation is going to be different. So when it comes to violence in our community and when it impacts our community, whether it be a severe incident or even a fatality, it causes this massive ripple effect throughout really the individual, their surrounding family and loved ones, and really the community as a whole. So at the Women's Center, we kind of look at it as a layered approach. Of course, we support the primary victims, those immediately affected by the incident. Of course, we support the secondary victims, those who are close to the primary victim. This could be their family members, their loved ones. And we also support tertiary victims, our community members who hear about these incidents in the news, or they may have gone to school with these folks. It really does cause an impact there too. So our job after these incidents is to reassure the community, pardon me, that we're here for them, that we're present in schools, in local organizations and clubs to let folks know that resources are available, help is available, and really just to get in there with that education piece and do workshops on violence and safety and healthy relationships and boundaries and anything that we can get in there to really just teach about teach children specifically how to have healthy relationships, not just relationships, but friendships and relationships with their teachers and just overall respect. That is postvention, is making sure that we're getting into these schools to provide support, provide the groundwork. And in a weird way, it circles back to that prevention again, just to make sure that folks know the signs, know the resources, and know the right way to do things. So how does the WRC support victims? This is where we get into kind of our spiel, the Women's Center history, our mission, and our philosophy. Now I think would be a good time just to remind folks that I do have this little QR code here. It goes to a Google form for an anonymous question forum. Please feel free to utilize this. I am going to check it at the end of the presentation. And for folks who may be watching this at a later time and not here live with us, on our website, pnwwrc.org, we always have an open question forum and folks are welcome to submit there as well. So, a little bit about us. We started all the way back in 1979, and we were officially established with the funds provided by a county grant. So our initial work was actually volunteers helping women return to the workforce, whether it be resume writing, assertiveness trainings, job search skills, research on jobs. Really, our main goal at that time, back in the late 70s, was to help women return to the workforce. Really, as the years went on, we evolved into a domestic violence and rape crisis center, really just to reflect the needs of our community. So who we are and what we do, it's our mission to provide advocacy, education, and services to the community in order to create a safe, supportive environment that eliminates violence against women and children and promotes gender equality. So some of the services that we offer to survivors of violence, we offer case management. Our case managers are just fantastic. They help with housing, they help with employment, they help with entitlements and benefits like getting SNAP through DSS. For folks who don't know, SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Application Program. I could be misspeaking. SNAP is essentially a way for folks to get EBT and get food. So it's a great resource for folks who are low income and simply can't afford it. Our case managers help them apply for these benefits. We also partner with a lot of different local resources like Putnam CAP, as well as some local food pantries. So we often do give referrals for those. We assist folks in finding daycare, as well as assisting them with daycare applications through the Department of Social Services, and so much more. Our advocates tend to focus a little more on the legal side of things, but again, there is so much overlap between them. Both our advocates and our case managers just provide vital work. But our advocates tend to focus more on crisis intervention, really that immediate intervention, either prior to an event, during an event, or right after an event. They are helping them with safety planning. They're helping them with getting orders of protection, securing immediate housing and shelter. That's what our advocates are doing, is that immediate crisis intervention. They also accompany folks to family and criminal court. They assist with composing and e-filing orders of protections. And they also provide legal referrals and host free legal clinics. We also do have therapeutic services here at the Women's Center. We have individual therapy for adults and individual therapy for children, as well as groups for both adults and children. Right now, we do have our walk-in domestic violence group running on Tuesday evenings here at the Women's Center. That is open to any and all survivors of domestic violence. And then we also do have, at this moment, 2 children's groups going, one for 8 to 12 and one for, I believe, 13 to 17. All this information can be found right on our website as well as our social media as well. Finally, we offer shelter. Of course, shelter is going to be for folks who are actively fleeing domestic violence. Our confidential shelter can house 15 survivors and it's staffed 24/7. At our shelter, we offer special programs such as specialized support groups for those survivors. We offer art therapy, and we always have plenty of activities for our children at our shelter as well. Another big portion that we do is more of the external work. All of those are kind of the internal work that we offer to our clients, but of course, prevention is huge when it comes to domestic violence and sexual assault. So I am the Director of Community Education, Outreach, and Volunteers, and my whole role is going into local schools, colleges, local organizations, basically to, allow folks to learn more about domestic violence, learn more about prevention, We can do presentations on sexual assault, on stalking, on internet safety, on dating violence, healthy relationships, boundaries, and really so much more. Something else that we offer is our volunteer program, and our volunteers can kind of be broken down a few different ways. Our general volunteers can help with things like community outreach, administrative duties, and even stuff like fundraising for our bigger events and our galas and helping with donors and data entry. So we have our kind of our general volunteers, and we also do have our SANE volunteers. So SANE stands for Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner, and essentially what our SANE volunteers do is they, with the consent of a client or of a survivor, we go to local hospitals and provide accompaniment for them when they're receiving the sexual assault rape examiner kit. So we go there to tell them their rights about it. We go for emotional support. We make sure that if they want to report to the police, we kind of walk them through it to make sure they have all that support. We want to be there from the start of their hospital visit to the end of their hospital visit, and of course, get connected with them once they leave as well. So these volunteers report to our SANE coordinator, and basically we keep folks on a shift on call. That way we can ensure that we have an advocate to go when there is a survivor in need. So why do we do this work? Of course, we want to create a community that fosters safety in homes, schools, and workplace. We want to value all people for their inner strength and their self-respect. We, of course, want to provide support for children to become productive and fulfilled adults who also know what healthy relationships look like and how to maintain those. And in the bigger picture, we desire a community that's intolerant to all violence, that's educated on the ways that power can be abused, and it values and respects all of its members. And then finally, here's a little plug about us. So you folks are welcome to stay connected. Again, there's our Facebook, our Instagram, and if you scan the QR code, it will take you right over to our website, or you can just go to pnwwrc.org.